You are in the Temple of the Rants, where I rant about whatever my $15 a month plus patrons want me to rant about. You can get one of these by being one of those. This one's for Menkzel, who says, rant about people who think that fan service in anime contributes to sexism, sexualization, and objectification in real life. Here's the thing. I am always going to fall on the side of personal responsibility when it comes to these matters, because it is definitely a fact that the media we consume influences us. It definitely has an effect on the way that we perceive things. But that is not a necessary component of it, and what we take from it changes depending on the context of how we consume it and how we think about it. So, like, I can say that I at least don't consider myself to be a sexist person, or who objectifies women. I, would consider myself, if anything, to be closer to a feminist, in that I respect women and think they're completely equal to men in every way, and that they obviously should not be treated as sexual objects. I feel like this kind of shit is obvious, and we all kind of get it, but, I also know that there's way more insanity in this world than I come into contact with on a daily basis. But, like, I also love fan service. I love anime because it is not real. It's a way to explore different feelings, different urges, different instinctual, feelings and thoughts that we have, and to be able to think about them from different angles. Like, you don't have to watch something and take it at face value. You don't have to watch it and get the same thing out of it that somebody else does. And so, like, ultimately, I think that when we have these concerns, what we need is just good education about the subjects. Like, for instance, violence. I love violence in media. I love to watch a guy get cut in half in a show. I love to cut a guy in half in a video game. I am absolutely disgusted with violence in real life. I want nothing to do with violence. I think violent people are scum. Like, I don't respect, there's no violent solution that I respect. I think that everything could be solved non-violently, obviously not everything will be solved that way. Not everything in the moment can be solved that way, but, like, there always is a non-violent solution that we should be trying to consider as quickly as possible. Like, our instinct should be non-violence, and violence should only be a conclusion that we come to when we have no recourse for something that's happening, So, the reason I can have that opinion and still think violence in media is cool is because I'm thinking about it. I'm not taking it as normal that the things that happen in fiction are something that applies to real life. Like, or even if it is something that I think is like the way the world is, I can reject that. I can say I don't support things being the way that they are as presented through the media, right? So, like, if I see, like, a woman being, let's say, raped in an anime, and it's sexualized and it's attractive, like, the point of me getting enjoyment out of that is not that I think that this is okay or that I would want to do this in reality. It's that I have an understanding of why someone would do this, why this, like, makes sense in context, and I'm appreciating it as an idea in and of itself, but not as something that translates to any desire to see that same thing happen in reality. It's a cartoon. It exists to, I don't want to say release, but to, like, to allow understanding of something that has a logic behind it, and you look at it and you understand that logic and then reject that logic, if you understand what I mean. So, does fan service contribute to sexism, sexualization, objectification in real life from anime? I would say that it can contribute based on what people consuming it already think. If you're somebody who, thinks of women as objects, and then you continue to consume media which treats them that way, and you interpret that as being reflective of the way things are, and it reinforces your identity, your set of beliefs, then yes, it is contributing in that sense. But that is not inherent to the medium that you would draw those conclusions. That is the mindset that you're taking towards consuming it. So you just need to change people's mindsets. It's not about changing the art itself, because the person creating the art doesn't necessarily even have to think that way. Or even if they do, it's not that they're acting on it. They're just creating something that is couched in some understanding that they have. But you as a consumer make the decision about what you're going to take away from that, you know? And so now if we look at it in the sense of, on a broad scale, let's say that, there's so much sexualization in media, and because there's enough people who aren't thinking about it the right way, it's making things worse in some marginal way. So wouldn't it be better if we just cut down on it altogether? Well, I think that understanding why we're doing these things is way more important than running away from it. You know, way more important than trying to cover up the sexuality and say, like, hey, everybody, if we cover this up, less people will think about it. No, because it's coming from the fact that people are thinking about it. It's coming from the already existing desire to have those things, to look at that. You know, it's like how advertising works. Not because advertising is taking something they understand about you that is innate to your human experience, and then playing on that to make you, want to buy a product or want to think a certain way. And what we need to do is understand, why are people thinking that, and how can we change the way that they're thinking about it? How can we reverse engineer the advertising or advertise the opposite ideal, So, and of course, there's always this battle of ideas where a lot of people just think that, or really everybody just thinks that what they believe is righteous. So while, personally, I hope that people aren't going around thinking of women as objects, and I think that progressing towards a better society would mean less of that type of thinking, there are plenty of people out there who believe the opposite, and maybe there's a scientific way of saying that, we ran all the stats and figures, and it turns out if we do society this way, things will be better. Nobody operates that way. Nobody thinks like that. Nobody's trying to move society that way. And even then, we don't have that kind of data. We just don't. We don't have the scientific data of, what is the best way for a society to be run. So, when we make decisions say, oh, well, we're going to, cut down on sexuality in media because we think that it's contributing to this mindset, that's just an emotional decision we're making based on what we think will, edge us in the right direction. But, it's just based on whatever sounds logical to us in that moment. I'm kind of spiraling in all directions here, but my point is just simply that, I think that if you believe that fan service contributes to sexism, sexualization, objectification, I think it's possible for it to do that, but I also think it's possible for it to do the opposite. I think it's possible for it for people to look at it and draw a different conclusion, and to maybe even reject those notions via that. It's possible for people to maybe see a sexual scene in an anime and think, I don't like that, I reject that aspect of reality, and it makes me feel even more strongly that women need to be respected, to have seen that. It's kind of like, watching something like The Wire, and seeing the harsh realities of a life of crime, or even more simplistic than that, The Godfather. You don't come away from The Godfather necessarily thinking, I want to now be a violent criminal. You more likely come away thinking well, now I understand why I will never become a violent criminal, So, yeah, it's just about what we take away from it, and I think it's a very bad idea to try to censor any kind of art on the basis of what we think people are going to take away from it. because we need it all to be there if we want to understand it.